All right, no. Good morning. Hello, welcome to yet another episode of Redstone LAPIS LAZULI. Hello, it is I, your host, Bogo Kiddo. Here, let me switch this out here. Oh, yes. I am back in the cave. I'm still in the cave. Ha, look at that sunrise coming up inside the cave. Like, how can that happen? And I think I know how it can happen. And I was thinking about, like, how is this happening? It's because Minecraft doesn't draw the chunk borders to the end. So it doesn't know that there's a wall there. It doesn't know that there's a wall there that would block the light because it doesn't draw the chunk borders out that far. So it doesn't know if it should draw a sunbeam all the way through or not. I mean, it's a bug. I'm sure they can figure out a way to fix it out, but like it's probably not their priority. But yeah, like look at like how's that sunrise coming in? Oh, look, it's gone because the wall, like the wall behind me generated, which blocks out the light. Oh geez, whatever. Okay, anyways. Here, I hate that stuff. Let me get rid of it. Time set night. There. So there. Now no sunlight is going to find its way down into the underground cave. Anyways, hey, good morning. Look at this guy here. What are you doing, zombie man? How can you be living there? Like, you put lights there and stuff. Oh, from up here. Well, maybe. I don't know. Look at this. I can fix it. All right. Everywhere. Glow like in. So yeah, welcome. We have survived the election. Wow, what a crazy election. I mean, it's still going on, right? We're still trying to figure out who controls the House. But amazingly, the Democrats have held on to the Senate. And depending on what happens in Georgia, they might control the Senate. Oh, that's when things get really good. If the Democrats can control the Senate, that's some fantastic news. Well, here, before I get too far out of here, before I go like talk about politics and stuff, let me show you what I've done here in Minecraft, right? Like, okay, so I expanded out. I don't know if I told you this or not. I expanded this out to 15. And then I finally added some like tracks so it goes somewhere. So let's go on a ride. Let's go see where this goes. Why don't I take the first one? I should mark them somehow, but I don't have any way yet to do it. Oh, here I go. Like over there's a bunch of water. Like just a pool of water. It's kind of crazy. But yeah. So I made this like spooky passage. I probably should like make the light a little bit better because it's dark and scary. But eventually, look at this. I found a cave. I found like this. But look where it takes me. What? So I'm outside again. And I'm going on this trip here. Yeah. And eventually I'll come across a station, but I haven't made the stop stations yet. So this is a way of getting back into the outer loop from the inside. That way you don't have to go all the way around. You could like cut through the middle. But now I'm going the wrong way. But that's okay. And I need to get my bow in hand so I can shoot for another direction. But yeah, this is my idea. Okay, so my idea was originally was that, remember back in the day, I don't know if you ever did, but like if you ever go to Disneyland, and I did a lot when I was a kid because I lived in LA. So I mean I didn't go a lot, but I went a few times. So I have memories of Disneyland, and there's a train that goes around the whole park, a train, And in that train, I remember it would go by like displays. They would have like setups and displays and stuff. And it would be interesting to see it because you just sit in the train and just like see it as it goes by. And one of the things that showed me was a display of a Tyrannosaurus Rex fighting a Triceratops, which like in real life couldn't actually happen because they didn't live together, but still, it had a big volcano in the background. It was really cool, and I could be getting it mixed up with I could be getting it mixed up with Knott's Berry Farm. I don't remember it because they also had a train. But anyways, I thought, how cool! What is Disneyland but a giant like cultural, like European cultural generation? Like now it's not just European, but it's a big culture generation. It makes culture. It generates culture. Like it creates films and markets those films worldwide, and it makes that culture look great, fantastic. And all the stories that Disney told at the beginning were all European stories. No American stories, not so much American stories, but a lot of European stories. Like, okay, that's where he comes from. That's that's the stories that's the stories he has. That's the story he's gonna tell. Okay. Like I don't know, maybe Walt Disney was a Nazi. Anyways, or he was Nazi sympathetic. In any case, he had a good idea. he made a giant a giant mechanism to generate culture nonstop. Just generate culture. And I thought, what a fantastic idea. What if I did that? But instead of having stops for like European stories, every stop would be a Native American story. So I thought, hey, that'd be cool. So I'm like, I can do that, right? So I tried to like get try to ask around for like help to see if anyone wanted to help, but I didn't hear anything back. Okay, fine. And then I'm like, well, fine, I'll just like study the stories on my own. So I bought a book and I read the stories native to to this, or the stories of the native people where I live and what is this, Kalapulia land, but I didn't know them very well. And so it's really hard for me. It was really hard for me. I can't go down. It was really hard for me to do it. I didn't know what to like say. I didn't know what to make. I didn't know like how to interpret the stories, and without making it sound silly. I didn't know how to do it, so I kind of abandoned it. But the idea I think was still good. Make a loop where you can just constantly go around repeating the memes of a particular story, so that and through repetition, going over and over and over, like those memes will sink in, just like the way culture sinks in by looping Disney stories over and over and over again. Just like they have that train that goes around the whole park. Not the monorail, but the train. So, and the story I was going to tell was the rebirth of America. So, one of those ways I was going to do it was finding out about, well, going back to our history. Like, we can't forget, right? We got to know where we came from. And we got to know why we started this trip. So I wanted to continue on with what I was talking about earlier, because earlier I told this big story about how the West, what are the beginnings of the West, and the West can trace back a lot of its culture to ancient Greece. I'm not saying that ancient Greece is the end all be all of cultures. That's just the strain. That's just the part of the Mediterranean and Mesopotamia. That was just the part that influenced us, right? I'm not saying the other parts weren't important or anything. In fact, I went back and looked, and well, I was saying, like earlier, there are the ancient Greeks had to figure out a lot of things for the first time. Like, people just didn't know. They didn't, like, no one ever thought about it at that time. I mean, you're coming out of the Stone Age, right? This is like the thing is that we're talking Stone Age at this point. Stone Age. People are using stone tools, and the great discovery of that time was bronze. Because when your tools don't shatter, like, then, and you can like reuse them, just straighten them out and reuse them instead of having to make a new stone tool, like, and it's just a better quality tool. Bronze tools are just better quality than stone tools. So that was a massive jump for humanity to go from stone tools to bronze tools. And remember, back in the day, like, there was one group of people that had power just because they always had power. It was always the way it was, right? They were born into it. They're aristocrats. They were and so because they were the aristocrats, like, what did that mean? That meant they got a big chunk of everything that everyone else made. Everyone below them, everyone in their deal, had to give them something. Had to give the aristocracy something. To give them food, basically, so that they weren't having to work in the fields. So the aristocracy had leisure time. They had time when they weren't working. And when you had time when you weren't working, that means you have time to do other things, like learn about stuff. If you're not having to constantly work and tend to the animals and like work your fields, and then exhausted by the end of the day of doing that, and then just like huddle, and then having to gather wood to keep your little like tiny ass uninsulated hut together to freeze through winter before you can start growing crops again to hopefully survive the next cycle. You don't have time to sit around and sit around and not only just sit around, but to have enough extra resources to just give to some other dude to sit there and do nothing. Not only can you not do nothing, but you can't pay for someone else to not do nothing too. That's insane. You're barely scraping by. Farmers, like, if you're not aristocracy, if you're like if you're just a farmer, if you're, or like, worse than a farmer, a slave, if you're barely scraping by. You're barely making it. Like, it's not a comfortable life. And in ancient Greece, their soil is crap. It's really bad. It's full of rocks. They have to really work the land to get all the rocks out so they can like grow stuff. And then the weather there isn't the best. So isn't the best for farming. So like it was tough. It was really hard for the farmer. So they didn't have time to just sit around and do nothing like the nobles did. Yeah, the nobles, they're all fancy. They got all this extra like food and money and stuff. So sure, they can just be lazy. They can just laze about. Not only that, they can afford to get other people to come and live with them and then teach them stuff. That's where the idea of patronage came from. That you have to be wealthy enough to like have free time for yourself and pay for the free time of someone else to not work. Like, this other person has to not work and they have to have something that they can teach you. So, or like they can do for you. So when I when I said before that the aristocracy prided themselves because they said we have literally a better culture. It's because they literally had time to sit around and then have extra money to pay for someone else to sit around and teach them stuff, or do stuff like write poems for them, because that's what Homer was. You have to remember, if you're not working the fields and you don't have like, if you're not, and you're not like independently wealthy, if you're not working the fields and you're not like a merchant trading goods and traveling to like get goods from one place to the other and you're not aristocracy, you got to have someone taking care of you. You need a patron. You need patronage. So that's what the aristocrats would do. They would find people who were like good at telling stories, at entertaining, and teaching. And well, teaching, they didn't even have the idea of teaching so much back then, but like good influence, I don't know. I haven't read that book in a long time, so I have to like read it again. But the aristocracy had time to and money and resources to pay for people to come by and literally just write stories about them. So, hey guy, come over here. You do this magic thing called writing. I want you to write down my awesome epic story. And let me tell you my awesome epic story. And so the guy listens and goes, okay, and he writes it down. And then he reads it back to the guy, but he writes it a little bit different, right? Because part of what the poet has to do, is the guy is literally paying you to make him look good. So, and you have to do what he wants in an aspect, right? You don't want to piss off your patron. So you want to, like, no matter whatever story the patron gives you, you're gonna make it. The poet guy is gonna make it look a little bit better, and make certain parts shine out more, and hide other parts. And because you got to keep your patron happy, and you have time to sit around and do this for them. So yeah, you're gonna do it for them because they're not making you work in the field. Otherwise, you'd have to go out and well, you wouldn't be able to learn about being a poet or learn about anything, because it was so hard back then. They're just scraping by. Okay. Anyways. So yeah, but you have to remember though, just because what? Why is it falling out? Dude, it's all falling out. Why are you falling out? Oh, is this full? No. What's going on, guy? Why were you falling out of my... Oh, right here. There must be a hole. Solid block. Is it not going in? It's like falling through that. It's not going up. What if I get a piece of glass and stick it here? Oh, it has to go up. So it has to go up. Okay, hold on. Let's see, what's the problem here? Okay, so okay. Okay, so oh no. Soul sand. Soul sand. Okay, and water buttercup. Water. It's not. Okay, so it's not going in. It's not working. Dude, it's not working. All this stuff is not working. Okay, so I just gotta make it go up somewhere else instead of up right over here. Up here. Okay. Soul sand. Okay. I need a bucket or a button. Button to hold the water back. That's not. Okay. I need. Ooh. That do it? Nothing was getting there. Yeah, there we go. Ah. Oh, wow. So this thing wasn't working for the longest time. Well, now it should work. Now it's working. It's working again. I didn't know how I broke it. Maybe I didn't. Maybe it wasn't working in the beginning. Okay. So, they had time to like. So, anyways. However, there was this one poet guy, and his name was Hesiod, and his brother did something. I don't know what. I don't know what happened, but his brother had wronged Hesiod, and Hesiod was really, really angry. So Hesiod wrote a poem called, and in this poem he talks about a goddess named Dike, which is a a goddess who maintains a cosmic balance, that if you upset it, she will come and get you and to right the balance. And he warned his brother of this. He warned him of this. I don't know what happened, but that's like the first time in ancient Greek records that they even have this concept of justice. Even the idea of justice. And Hesiod, he was a poet, but like, I don't know, something was, I don't know what it was. I don't really know what he was about, but he did say something to the effect that he wrote a poem called Working Days, in which he said that sure, the aristocracy might have its, awesome poets writing these great things about them, and they're all high in, they're high culture and stuff, but the farmer too has its own kind of excellence, his own kind of culture, his own kind of greatness, because there's no way the aristocracy could do what they do without the farmers. If the farmers didn't support the aristocracy couldn't do what they were doing. They couldn't be aristocracy. They need the farmers. And the farmers themselves have their own kind of excellence. Sure, maybe for the aristocracy, excellence means killing lots of people and having these great, awesome armaments and great powers to jump across lakes and oceans and kill warriors, whatever. But for the farmer, that's not excellence. That doesn't help a farmer at all. If farmer could jump across a lake and kill people, they don't care. Greatness for a farmer is being able to read the signs of nature and knowing when to plant and when to harvest, and knowing how to endure hardships, because things won't always go your way, because the farmer is ultimately at the whims of the gods. Whether or not the rain comes or the sun comes, or if it's too hot or too cold, the farmer has to take whatever nature gives him and tries to make a living out of it. Like the aristocracy, sure, they can like pick and choose who they want and whatever, but the farmers got to do with what they have. And again, the greatness for a farmer isn't being able to kill lots of people. It's being able to wrest a bit of life out of the earth. When like it's hard. It's hard to do agriculture. It's super hard to do agriculture, especially when you don't have oil to help you out. I mean, that's kind of why they started doing slavery, because agriculture is hard. But I said all that because, oh man, how was I going to tie this back in? But even before Hesiod had his idea of decay, in Mesopotamia, they had the Code of Hammurabi. One of the greatest achievements of Mesopotamians are the first written codified laws which revealed the level of social, political, economical, and legal development of the Mesopotamian civilization. Law in Mesopotamia is frequently closely associated with Code of Hammurabi, inscribed on the 7-foot and 4-inch, 2.25 meter tall stela discovered at Susa. But the oldest law codes date from the Sumerian period. The oldest example of a legal code is attributed to a Urukenga, who ruled the Sumerian city-state of Lagash in the 24th century BC. Like, that's incredibly early. 24,000 or 2,400 years before the birth of Christ, whatever, before Common Era, whatever they want to call it. But like, that's incredible. I mean, they were at the same time as the Egyptians. Like, that's incredible. Oh man, there's so many, like, I'm like catching all these things that I want to talk about, but I can't grab them all. There's too many of them. like ancient Egypt, like was fantastic. Look, they built the pyramids. Their kingdom lasted for thousands and thousands of years. Like the United States is not even 300 years old, and we're already talking about like civil war and crap like that. We already had one civil war. Egypt survived for like 4,000 years, just chilling. But that tells you how little things changed, how little change there was back then. Anyways, so like I don't want to be like, oh yeah, ancient Greeks were the end all be all of everything. Like it was a lot of other cultures and stuff. All I want to say is that ancient Greeks were really influential to the West, and that excellence can be found not just for the nobility, but it could also be found in the farmer, in the common person. Like, there was just so many balances they had to figure out for the first time, those ancient Greeks. But I don't have my book. I haven't read that book in like 20 years, so it's really hard for me just to like pull it out of my, pull it out and like talk to you again about it. Here, since I'm here, I want to talk about this before I get. The Indian Child Welfare Act is a law to place Native kids with Native families. Fascists hate the ICWA because affirmative action. Fascists want institutions to be colorblind, which means the institutional racism is never challenged. What do I mean? The Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 emerged as a response to over a century of cultural genocide initiatives on the part of the United States government aimed at eradicating Native peoples through family separation and assimilation efforts, putting children through torturous boarding schools. So the United States government, in order to snuff out the remnants of the Native population, stole their children and put them with white families and through boarding schools in order to like assimilate them into Anglo-American culture, into like American culture, into like colonizer culture. Like, forget where you came from, little children. This is what's real now, is what they were telling their kids. That's horrible. That's terrible. The United States has a history, and it continues to do this. It still does this. It still does this. Remember how Donald Trump separated those kids from their families at the border? That's a continuation of this, of stealing kids from their parents to erase their past and fill them with different content. So ICWA puts a priority on placing Native children with their families or tribal members. The United Nations has even been asked to consider ICWA as a model for combating cultural genocide. It's basically the absolute least the United States could do for communities that are still, in fact, sovereign nations. So all that says is that if you have a Native kid and you have two families and both families are equally qualified, both families meet the qualifications, both families are fantastic, both families are okay to adopt this kid. If one family is Native and the other family is non-Native, you give the kid to the Native family, to their family or to the tribe. That's where you give the kid. You don't give the kid to a non-Native. You stick the kid back to the Native. That's all it says. When you have two families that are both qualified, you give preference to the Native families. That's all it says. But some fascists have a problem with it. Fascists are like, okay, so fascists push this idea of color blindness. They want everyone to pretend like they don't see color. If you pretend that you don't see color, then you can pretend your institutions are colorblind, and you can pretend the outcomes of those colorblind institutions have nothing to do with color because they're colorblind, but they have to do entirely with the intrinsic value of the people. So if a particular group has very bad outcomes with an institution, it's not because the institution is bad because it's colorblind, but because the people themselves, all the blame falls on the people themselves. That's why those fascists don't ever want to talk about race. They want to pretend that everything is colorblind and that the outcomes are the natural consequence of the nature of the people and have nothing to do with the system. That's what the Nazis want to talk about. That's what the fascists want to say, which is totally wrong, right? That's totally wrong. Everyone knows race is a real thing. I can see race. You know, I can see the outcomes of race. Other people can see the outcomes of race. Anyone can see the outcomes of race because race is a real thing. It's real. It's real. It's actually there. You can't pretend that no one sees it because people obviously see it. It's obviously there. Like, how can it not be there? Everyone's, there's different cultural norms. There's different cultural symbols. There's race is a real thing. And the entire history of the United States is built upon the concept of seeing race. The whole thing is built upon race. The whole thing. So to be colorblind is to be history blind. To not be able to see, to have no history whatsoever. You have to see color. You have to see race in order to deal with reality. And that is why there's affirmative action. Because what does affirmative action say? Affirmative action says that when there are two people equally qualified for a position, two people, they both are excellent qualifications. Here's the standard. They both met it. They both met the standard. When that happens, you give preference to minorities. Because historically, they had instead of affirmative action, what's the affirmative negation action, negative action, affirmative. What's the opposite of affirmation? Let me look that up real quick. Opposite of affirmation. Refutation, negation, nullification. Nullification. Negation. I'm going to stick to negation. Okay, so for centuries upon centuries, instead of for real in this country, it wasn't codified. I mean, it was, but it wasn't labeled as such. But for centuries, the United States practiced negation action. Negation, not affirmative action, but negation action, in which you had two humans equally qualified, equally human, but one human was deemed to be lesser than for the color of their skin, for their race, not even their color, but for their race. They were deemed lesser than for their race, so that even though they're equally qualified, what the white person always got preference. Always got preference. Negation, negative, affirmative action, negative action. For centuries, the United States practiced negative action. For centuries upon centuries, the United States practiced negative action, whereby two humans equally qualified, equally met the standard, but the white person always got the preference in every single situation, every time. So affirmative action, and what has that done? The history of negative action repeated over and over again. The history of negative action repeated over and over again is that certain people, certain races are negatively affected. They have less wealth, they have less lifespan, they have less prosperity, they have less ownership, they have less rights, they have more incarceration, they have more health problems. All sorts of problems associated with poverty are heaped upon them. That is the consequence of negative action over centuries. And it's real. It's real. You can't get away from it. It's a real thing. Negative action and its history are real. And it's based on race. Negative action is based on race. The whole thing, and it's real. We can look at its outcomes and see its effects to this day. Therefore, affirmative action is an attempt to undo the harm of negative action. Affirmative action is to undo the harm of negative action, in which when you have a job opportunity and both candidates are qualified, you give preference to the minority. But this is tempered, right? It's not like the old way, not like negative action. Negative action had for its negative action part chattel slavery. But affirmative action, part of the values that are associated with affirmative action include a floor, something below which you can never go if you follow our values. There's a floor. Human rights. You cannot go below this. You cannot go below it. If you need to be fed, we'll feed you. If you need healthcare, we'll give you healthcare. If you need water, we'll give you water. If you need shelter, we give you shelter. These are the floor. Just for being human, you get these things. You can never. So, like, it doesn't matter your race. It doesn't matter your position. All humans get these. See? But in the negative action, that was the problem, right? In the negative action, it was, if you were not of the white race, you had to, a lot of times you were subject to chattel slavery. The worst kind of slavery. The worst kind of slavery. They didn't do this kind of slavery back in ancient days. They didn't do that. They no. Because they didn't have guns. I think chattel slavery was only possible because of guns. But yeah. So negative action has historical, like, built up deficit of shit it needs to fix. And that's what affirmative action is. It's a way of trying to address that built up historical deficit. And I support affirmative action. I support it. However, if you're a racist, if you're a white supremacist, you do not want this, you don't want this to be acknowledged. You do not want the history of negative action and racism to be acknowledged. So that's why you don't like affirmative action. That's why they want to get rid of affirmative action. Because they don't want to acknowledge the history of racism. And they want to perpetuate the gains that were made under negative action. So ICWA is like affirmative action in that, because this is a real fact. It's real history. It's real. It's actual. It's not a potential. It's an actual thing. The United States actually stole children from Native families, actually stole them away from their mother and fathers and their brothers and sisters, stole them away from their communities, and dumped them into an alien land where everything about themselves was erased and replaced with I don't know, with foreign content. And so to address that deficit, and of course that leaves real harm. That leaves real harm. I mean, here, I keep saying principles are important because they appear elsewhere. If it's true all the way through. Look what's happening in Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine and took the people and kidnapped them and sent them back to Russia to erase their identities as Ukrainians and to turn them into colonized, or to fill them with colonizer content, foreign content. Russia is doing the same thing that the United States did to its native people. If it was wrong then, it's wrong now. And it continues to be wrong. So if it continues to be wrong, we need to keep the Indian Child Welfare Act to make sure that native children stay with their native families and that native culture can continue to grow and move throughout the future. We have to do it. We have to. Principles are important. They matter. They appear in other places over and over and over again. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Because, like most Supreme Court cases, the matter isn't really about the welfare of any individual litigant. The case is just an invitation to a general broadside against race-conscious legislation, asking the justices to deem ICWA as an impermissible race-based preference to toss aside right next to affirmative action. And that's where the money behind these suits comes in, per Mother Jones. In all three lawsuits, non-native foster parents wanted to adopt native children. 2 of the 3 were ultimately successful in doing so, but the foster parents, along with the Attorney General for 3 states, with the backing of deep-pocketed right-wing groups like the Goldwater Institute and the Bradley Foundation, are suing the federal government and 5 tribes on the grounds that the ICWA represents race-based discrimination and an overtly intrusive federal government. Yeah, dude, the reason why it's there is because the United States killed, murdered all the Native Americans. That's why it's there. And you want us to forget about it? You want us to say, oh, you're not allowed to think about that stuff. Nah, forget you. That doesn't go away. History doesn't go away. History is there. Today is built upon the back of yesterday, the foundation of yesterday. It doesn't go away. You couldn't be here if it wasn't for yesterday. So, if the United States is serious about fixing its karma, not only will it preserve affirmative action and the ICWA, but it will do other things to address its historic wrongs, like reparations and land back. If Russia should pay reparations to Ukraine, why not the United States pay reparations to Black Americans and Native Americans? Why not land back to Native Americans? If Crimea belongs to Ukraine, why not honor the treaties that the United States has already made with Native Americans? You already made the treaties. You already promised. Why not honor them? If it's wrong for Russia to break its treaties, it's wrong for the United States to break its treaties. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. All right. I got this other thing. Humans are the mushrooms. Okay, check it out. So, do you know about mushrooms? Mushrooms are cool. I like mushrooms. Fun guys, right? Fun guy. Okay. But everyone, not everyone, but I used to think that the mushroom was like the fungus, right? The mushroom thing? Like here, do I have any? I can pull some up. Oh, there's some in the cave, I think. Yeah, here, mushroom. I used to think that like the mushroom, like, oh, that's the plant, that's the whole thing, that's the mushroom. But no. All this is like the flower. That's like the flower of the thing. The actual plant is called mycelium, and it lives in the soil. Like, this is on rock, but it would be in the soil normally. And the mycelium lives like a network, like a film, like a nebula in the soil. It's like a nebula in the soil, and it's huge. It's huge, and that's what it does. It's like that's where it lives. It doesn't. It's not that little mushroom. That's not all that little mushroom is like when the mycelium reaches the surface and decides, hey, I want to reproduce. So the mycelium, it's like a big, gigantic underground blob, like a nebula that lives underground, and it reaches like it grows up to the little surface area, and then it puts out little like mushrooms, and so the mushrooms are just like the iceberg of the mycelium. So that it's not really, the mushrooms aren't actually the where it lives. It lives in the body, in the mycelium. The mushrooms are just like ways it reproduces. But we see them and go like, oh, that's the that's the whole plant. No. And then I started thinking, wow, what if that's what humans were like? Humans, right? We think we're the thing, right? We think we're the thing. But we're actually only the reproducing part. Just like the mushrooms are only the fruiting body to reproduce, humans, individual humans, are only the part for society to reproduce. Because it's not the human that's moving forward through time. I mean, it is, but only for its lifetime. The human moves through its time only through the lifetime, but the society, the consciousness, continues on. The culture. That's why I feel like I have a connection to ancient Greece, because a strand of thought from ancient Greece can be traced all the way from there, all the way through the rest of Europe, across the Atlantic, and then over to my brain. Like, that's why I can trace that thought. And that consciousness that I have now, it came from there. I can see where it came from, but it is not the same kind of consciousness that started 2,000-3,000 years ago. 3,000 years. It's not the same kind of consciousness, but it's connected. So the consciousness I have now is connected to something 3,000 years ago. But me, my physical body, is not connected to it. I guess it is. Maybe. Because my physical body had to come from somewhere, right? And that too can be traced back on a different line. What? That too can be traced back on a different line. Backwards, all the way to the beginning. Oh, this thing works now. There we go. Oh, I didn't realize it was so broken for so long. I never did a mining thing yet. No mining yet. Sorry, no mining. Yes. It's the wool getting coming along eventually. You know what? Oh, like the shears might have broken. Let me go see if the shears broke. Not here. Nope, they're still getting sheared. That part's working. Everyone's in their box. Safe and sound. Yeah, there's the wool. Okay, so it does go. Yeah, so it's going. It's going. Yeah, humans as the mushrooms and society as the mycelium. The culture. That's funny. Oh, man. I don't know. I'm watching the election. I think it's pretty good. One thing I know already, if not for voters under 30, tonight would have been a red wave. The exit polls. It was the youth that did it by far. The young people, I mean, like, seriously. Old people tended to vote for Republicans. People my age, tend to vote Republicans. Oh, that's terrible. And then, yeah, it's why, dude? Why? What's going on? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, old people? Good job, Gen Z. Good job. Thank you. Oh man, thanks. Wow. That was scary. Thank you. Here's the problem, right? Like another problem that we have. Global mass of farm animals is now 22 times the weight of all wild animals. So, right now, today, all this is the animals eaten by humans. And the animals kept as pets. Oh, and what are these, wild animals? Animals, yeah, wild animals. All right, and then people. So the animals that we eat is a huge chunk of the biomass that's getting consumed. In prehistory, in the Stone Age, it used to be wild animals used to dominate us poor little humans. So I think there's a little imbalance here, right? There's just a little bit of imbalance. And I think a way of getting back to something a little bit better would be to not eat so many animals and to give back a lot of nature back to the wild animals. That would help out a lot. What else do I have? Sex by race. What? how people voted. I don't know if that's for. I don't know if that's for Georgia or for what, but basically, it's white supremacy. It's white supremacy. Republicans stand for white supremacy. That's why you can see that typically white people vote for Republicans, because it's white supremacy. I'll read that one. Too many people in prison. Oh yeah, this is a good one. I still can't get over this. One of the most important natural experiments to come from COVID. It's all right there in front of us. A free lunch pathway to reducing some of the most immense cruelty in our society. To protect those most vulnerable to COVID-19 during the pandemic, the CARES Act allowed the Justice Department to order the release of people in federal prisons and place them on home confinement. More than 11,000 people were eventually released. Of those, the Bureau of Prisons reported that only 17 of them committed new crimes. That's not a typo. 17. That's a 0.15% recidivism rate in a country where it's normal for 30 to 65% of people coming home from prison to reoffend within 3 years of release. Of those 17 people, most new offenses were for possessing or selling drugs or other minor offenses. Of the 17 new crimes, only one was violent, an aggravated assault, and none were sex offenses. This extremely low recidivism rate shows us that there are many, many people in prison we can safely release to the community. These 11,000 releases were not random. People in low and minimum security prisons or at high risk of complications from COVID were prioritized for consideration for release. So what that's saying is that we can send home thousands of people in prison who are there needlessly. They're sitting in prison for no reason. It costs the federal taxpayer lots of money to house these people, and contractors make a lot of money, I'm sure. But for no reason. We can send them home and have them on home confinement just as well. There's no need to keep people locked up. Our prisons are a failure of society. Just like billionaires are failures of society. Today doesn't feel quite as focused, but okay. States with a smaller population than Los Angeles County. So that's part of the reason why the United States has such a hard time with government, is because we don't have proportional representation. These people only get 2 senators, but these people get 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 20. Like, you see like how unfair that is? Like, it's not at all fair representation. That means these people's vote counts less than these people's votes. That's not fair. There's got to be a way to reduce the disparity of power between states with high population and states with low population. Because right now, states with low population have way too much power over states with high population. All right. Finally, I'm going to end with this one because, like, this. I like this. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. ear demands some variety. Now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences, and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes, when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all of the impetus of a crescendo, the roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this, it is important. So write with a combination of short, medium, and long sentences. Create a sound that pleases the reader's ear. Don't just write words, write music. Gary Provost. All right. Okay. Man, I don't know. I had all these things I wanted to say, and then they kind of just like evaporated. I'm working on the station, I guess. I think I need to work more on this stuff. And I basically have to make more of these guys. But I haven't really figured out how to make them yet. I mean, I made this one, but it's I'm not happy with this stuff. Oh, I wonder if I can put it underneath. All right, I'll test it out later. Okay, then. Congratulations to Ukraine for retaking Kherson. That's great, and looking forward to retaking the rest of your country, and that's awesome. We need to continue to support you. I think wintertime is the best time to make advancements because you guys probably have better gear than the Russians. So